Hello everyone, my name is Camilo Perez Triana. I am a student at Balboa Academy. I am in the Shed Youth Theater, and I'm going to be reading to you guys chapters 56 and 57 of the Ickabog. Let's go up. Now, chapter 56, The Dungeon Plot. As soon as Spittleworth and Flapoon were out of earshot of the king, Spittleworth rounded on Flapoon. You were supposed to check those letters before giving them to the king. Where am I supposed to find a dead Ickabog to stop? So something? Suggested Lapoon with a shrug. So something. So something. Well, what else can you do? Said Flapoon, taking a large bite of Duke's Delights he'd sneaked from the king's table. What can I do? You think this is all my problem? You were the one who invented the Ickabog, said Flapoon thickly as he chewed. He was getting very bored of Spittleworth shouting at him and bossing him around. You're the one who killed Beamish, snarled Spittleworth. Where would you be by now if I hadn't blamed the monster? Without waiting for Flapoon's response, Spittleworth turned and headed down to the dungeons. At very least, he could stop the prisoners from singing the national anthem so loudly, so the king might win the war, think the war against the Ickabogs had taken a turn for the worse. Quiet! Quiet! Bellowed Spittleworth as he entered the dungeon, because the place was ringing with noise. There was singing and laughter, and Cankerby, the footman, was running between the cells, fetching and carrying kitchen equipment for all the different prisoners, and the smell of maiden's dreams, fresh from Mrs. Beamish's oven, filled the warm air. The prisoners all looked far better fed than the last time Spittleworth had been down here. He did not like this. He did not like it at all. He especially did not like to see Captain Goodfellow looking as fit and as strong as ever he had. Spittleworth liked his enemies weak and hopeless. Even Mr. Dovetail looked as though he had trimmed his long white beard. You are keeping track, aren't you? He asked the panting Cankerby. All of these pots, knives, and whatnots you're handing out. Of course, my lord, gasped the footman, not liking to admit that he was confused by all the orders Mrs. Beamish was giving him, and that he had no idea which prisoner had what. Spoons, whisks, ladles, and saucepans, and baking trays had to be passed between the bars to keep up with the demand of Mrs. Beamish's pastry. Once or twice, Cankerby had accidentally passed one of Mr. Dovetail's chisels to another prisoner. He thought he'd collected everything at the end of each night, but how on earth was he to be sure? Sometimes Cankerby worried that the warder of the dungeon, who was fond of wine, might not hear prisoners whispering to each other, if they took it into their heads to plot anything after the candles were snuffed out at night. However, Cankerby could tell that Spittleworth was in no mood to have problems brought to him, so the footman held his tongue. There will be no more singing, shouted Spittleworth. His voice echoed through the dungeons. The king has a headache. In fact, it was Spittleworth whose head was beginning to throb. He forgot the prisoners as soon as he turned back on them, and he fell to pondering how on earth he was going to make a convincing stuffed Ickabog. Perhaps Flapoon was on to something. Might they take the skeleton of a bull and kidnap a seamstress to stitch a dragonish covering over the bone and pad it out with sawdust? Lies upon lies upon lies. Once you've started lying, you had to continue. And then it was like being the captain of a leaky ship, always plugging holes in the sides to stop you from sinking. Lost in the thoughts of skeletons and sawdust, Spittleworth had no idea what he had just turned his back on, what promised to be his biggest problem yet. A dungeon full of plotting prisoners, each of whom had knives and chisels hidden beneath their blankets and behind the loose bricks in their walls. that this is chapter 56. Now we're going on to chapter 57. Daisy's plan. Up in the marshlands, where the snow still lay thick upon the ground, the Ickabog was no longer pushing the boulder in front of the cave mouth where it went out with its baskets. Instead, Daisy, Bert, Martha, and Roderick were helping it collect little mushrooms it liked to eat, and during these outings they also prized more frozen food from the abandoned wagon, which they took back to the cave for themselves. All four humans were growing stronger and healthier by the day. The Ickabog, too, was growing fatter and fatter, but this was because its bonding time was drawing ever closer. As the bonding time was when the Ichabod said it intended of eating the four humans. Bert, Martha, and Roderick were very happy about the Ichabod's growing belly. Bert, in particular, was certain that the Ichabod meant to kill them. He now believed that he'd been wrong about his father having the accident. The Ichabod was so real, it was real so clearly the Ichabod had killed Major Beamish. Often, in their mushrooming trips, the Ichabod and Daisy would draw a little ahead of the others, having their own little private conversation. "What do you think they're talking about?" Martha whispered to the two boys as they searched the bog for the small white mushrooms that Ichabod particularly liked. I think she's trying to make friends with it," said Bert. "What, so it'll eat us instead of her?" "It's a horrible thing to say," said Martha sharply. "Daisy looked after everyone in the orphanage. Sometimes she took punishments for other people too." Roderick was taken back. He had been taught by his father to expect the worst of everybody he met, and that the one way to get on in his life was to be the biggest, strongest, and meanest of every group. It was hard to lose the habits he'd been taught. But with his father dead and his mother and brothers doubtless in prison, Roderick didn't want these three friends to dislike him. "Sorry," he muttered, and Martha smiled at him. Now, as it happened, Bert was quite right. Daisy was making friends with the Ichabod, but her plan wasn't only to save herself, or even her three friends. It was to save the whole of Cornucopia. As she and the monster walked through the bog on this particular morning, drawing ahead of the others, she noticed a few snowdrops had managed to force their way up through the patch of melting ice. Spring was coming, which meant the soldiers would soon be returning to the edge of the marsh. With a funny seasick feeling in her stomach, because she knew how important it was that she got this right, Daisy said, "Ichabod, do you know the song you sing every night?" The Ichabod, who was lifting a log to see whether there were any mushrooms beneath it, said, "If I didn't know it, how I couldn't sing it, could I?" It gave a little wheezy chuckle. "Well, you know how you always sing that you want your children to be kind and wise and brave?" "Yes," agreed the Ichabod, and it picked up a small, silvery gray mushroom. Showed it to Daisy. "This is a good one. You don't get many silver ones in the marsh." "Lovely," said Daisy, as the Ichabod popped the mushroom into his basket. "And then in the last chorus of your song, you say you hope that your babies will kill people," said Daisy. "Yes," said the Ichabod, reaching to pull a small bit of yellowish fungus off a dead tree, showing it to Daisy. "This is poisonous. Never eat this kind." "I won't," said Daisy, drawing a deep breath. "But you really think a kind, wise, brave Ichabod would eat people?" The Ichabod stopped in the act of bending to pick up another silvery mushroom and peered at Daisy. "I don't want to eat you," it said, "but I have to, or my children will die." "You said they need hope," said Daisy. "What if the bonding time comes, and they saw their mother or father? Or, I'm sorry, I don't quite know." "I will be the Ica," said the Ichabod. and they will be my Ickaboggles. Well, then, wouldn't it be a wonderful, wouldn't it be wonderful if your Ickaboggles saw that Icka surrounded by people who love it and want to be happy and live with with them as friends? Wouldn't that fill them up with more hope than anything else could do? The Ickabog sat down on a fallen tree. For a long time it said nothing at all. Bert, Martha, and Roderick stood watching from a distance. They could tell something very important was happening between Daisy and the Ickabog. Although they were extremely curious, they did not dare approach. At last the Ickabog said, perhaps it would be better if I didn't eat you, Daisy. This was the first time the Ickabog called her by her name. Daisy reached out and placed her hand on the Ickabog's paw, and for a moment the two smiled at each other, and then the Ickabog said, "When my bonding time comes, you and your friends must surround me, and my Ickaboggles will be bonded, knowing you're their friends too. And after that, you must stay with my little Ickaboggles here on the marsh forever." Well, the problem is that with that is, said Daisy cautiously, holding the Ickabog's paw, that the food on the wagon will soon run out, and I don't think there's enough mushrooms here to support four of us and your Ickaboggles too. Daisy found it strange to be told this at a time when the Ickabog wouldn't be alive, but the Ickabog didn't seem to mind. Then what can we do? It asked her with its big eyes anxious. Ickabog, said Daisy cautiously. People are dying all over Cornucopia. They are starving to death and even being murdered. And all because some evil man made everyone believe you want to kill people. I did want to kill people until I met you four, said the Ickabog. But now you've changed. She got to her feet and faced the Ickabog, holding both of its paws. Now you understand that people, most people anyway, aren't cruel or wicked. They're mostly sad and tired, Ickabog. If they knew you, how kind you are, how gentle, how all you eat is mushrooms, they'd understand how stupid it is to fear you. I'm sure they'd want your Ickaboggles to leave the marsh and go back to the meadows where your ancestors lived, where there are bigger, better mushrooms for you and your descendants to live with us as friends. You want me to leave the marsh, said the Ickabog, to go amongst men and like guns and spears. Ickabog, please listen. If your Ickaboggles are bonded, surrounded by hundreds of people, all wanting to love and protect them, wouldn't that feed them more hope than any Ickaboggle ever had in history? Whereas the four of us stay here in the marsh and starve to death, and what hope will remain for your Ickaboggles? The monster stared at Daisy, and Bert, and Martha, and Roderick watched, wondering what on earth was happening at last. What on earth was happening? At last, a huge tear welled in the Ickabog's eye like a glass apple. I'm afraid they'll kill me and the Ickaboggles. They'll kill me and my Ickaboggles. They won't, said Daisy, letting go of the Ickabog's paw and placing her hands on either side of the Ickabog's huge, hairy face, so her fingers were buried in its long, meadow, marshy weed hair. I swear to you, Ickabog, we will protect you. Your bonding will be the most important in history. We're going to bring Ickabogs back, and Cornucopia too. Thank you very much for listening to my reading. I hope you enjoy the book. Thank you very much.